Hello, y'all, and welcome back. So as we get into the Republic, the first thing we see is that the main speaker is Socrates. And here it's really important to draw a sharp distinction between Socrates, the character in Plato's dialogues, and the historical Socrates. Socrates, Plato casts as the main speaker in all but 2 of his 35 dialogues out of respect for his mentor, but this Socrates says things and says them in a way that the historical Socrates would not have said those things. So historically, Socrates, as we saw in the last modules, is only interested in ethics. Within ethics, he's only interested in the question, how do you become a good person, and other closely related questions like the definition of certain virtue terms. And most importantly, he doesn't exposit. He never engages in exposition. He just asks questions. By contrast, Socrates, the character in Plato's dialogue, does exposit. He has a lot to say, and he exposits on almost every philosophical subfield. So topics in metaphysics, epistemology, aesthetics, logic, philosophy and mathematics, and most centrally in the Republic, probably what's known as political philosophy. So just an important distinction to draw. As the Republic begins, a group of people are sitting around discussing the question, what is justice? This very central moral term. And as they're talking, this sophist stands up. Thrasymachus is his name. He's a real-life sophist. So he's a very prominent, wealthy guy. And he says, justice is the rule of the stronger. So he's brash, he's brazen, he's amoral. He says, look, morality is for weak and foolish people. If you're not strong enough to just, crush weak people under your boot, then too bad. You're just destined to suffer. That's what justice is to me. And Socrates is intrigued, and he engages Thrasymachus in conversation, asks questions in his way, and very quickly shows that Thrasymachus just doesn't know what he's talking about. And Thrasymachus, true to form, gets really mad and bent out of shape and storms away. And the first book of the Republic's 10 books is done, effectively. And this book of the Republic, this first book of the Republic, is very similar to what is known as Plato's Socratic dialogues, where these are some earlier dialogues, I'm convinced they're earlier period dialogues, where Plato is recreating conversations, the kind of conversation, not actual conversations, but the kind of conversation that the historical Socrates had a lot of, where he's talking to somebody who claims to have unusually deep knowledge of morality. He's asking them questions about the definition, usually of some virtue term. And most importantly, these dialogues always end in a puzzle. The Greek term is aporia, where nothing's really been resolved. We don't have any firm definitions or deeper knowledge, but what we do know is that people who claim to know actually don't. That's book 1 of the Republic. But there's some other people in the audience named Glaucon and Adimantus. These are based on Plato's real-life brothers. And they say to Socrates, look, we get it. Thrasymachus, he doesn't know what he's talking about. You exposed his ignorance. But all the same, the basic point that he's making is hard to shake. This basic idea, which I think a lot of people either think is true or fear is true, that the only reason you should be a good person is because it sort of helps the bottom line, that's not so easily dismissed. Why be good? In point of fact, being good does usually help you get ahead. If you're hardworking and honest and loyal and faithful, usually you do have better relationships and better career and whatever. But in those situations where you could get away with doing the wrong thing, why be good? Thrasymachus seems to have a point. He's wrong, but he seems to have a point. And Socrates, in effect, says, well, make the case for that view as strong as you can, and I'll respond to it. And in responding to it, we'll get to the bottom of this question, why be good? So Glaucon begins by describing what most people think or suspect morality is by talking about the origin of morality. So he begins. This is Republic Book 2 now. Glaucon says, they say that to do injustice is naturally good and to suffer injustice bad. We'll pause there for a second. So a lot going on here. To do injustice is naturally good. So here's the idea. Supposing you and I are in some early society, and I don't care about moral good. I don't care about being a morally good person. In fact, those concepts aren't even part of my thinking. They have never occurred to me. All I care about is myself. And I just want what's good for me, the bottom line. And I realize right away that what is best for me in that sense is just taking your stuff. And if you resist, as you probably will, I'll just kill you. Horrible, right? Terrible. As Glaucon makes very clear, it is unjust. But it's good, for me, at least. Not morally, but in some deeper, more primal, more visceral sense of good, which he calls, and which, following him, I'll call, natural good. So natural good, just money, power, stuff for me. Basic, evolutionary, primal sense of good. So I maximize this through injustice. I get the most stuff by just taking your stuff, exploiting and using you, taking your stuff, okay? However, I realize, as he says, to suffer injustice is bad. So I realize that if society were set up so that I could just take your stuff, right away, no sooner would I have taken your stuff than some bigger, stronger person would come along, beat me up, or if they have like bigger guns or better guns or what, I have no guns, so they have guns, right? They would kill me and take my stuff, okay? And then I would have no stuff and I'd be dead. And I realize this all like immediately. So how do I maximize natural good? And we're all thinking kind of the same thing. We all just want to maximize natural good, much stuff as we can for ourselves. Well, he says, the badness of suffering it so far exceeds the goodness of doing it, that those who have done and suffered injustice and tasted both, but who lack the power to do it and avoid suffering it, decide that it is profitable to come to an agreement with each other, neither to do injustice nor to suffer it. As a result, they begin to make laws and covenants, and what the law commands they call lawful and just. This, they say, is the origin and essence of justice. Now, what Glaucon and the other speakers in the Republic call justice, I will, to kind of broaden the scope of the conversation a bit, call morality. And morality I will just provisionally now define as holding and acting on beliefs about moral right and wrong. That's not an explanation, it's not intended to be an explanation, but it's this basic psychological phenomenon. The question is what explains it? What explains this phenomenon? And the idea here is pretty clear. In this early society, we all want what's best for ourselves. We don't care about doing the right thing. Chaos is about to ensue. We've got our, knives and pitchforks. But then somebody says, let's all just take a deep breath, okay? Let's make a deal. Let's make an agreement. I don't take your stuff, and you don't take my stuff. And we're smart people. We're very clever at maximizing natural good. We realize that under this arrangement, okay, morality, law, justice, whatever, I don't, it's true, get to kill you and take your stuff. That's sad. That's unfortunate. I'd like to kill you and take your stuff. But I have way more stuff on this arrangement than I would if some bigger, stronger person killed me and took my stuff. In other words, this arrangement, morality, is the best way for me to maximize my natural good. It's best for the bottom line. So we all agree to it. And that's where morality comes from. Laws, covenants, justice, whatever. This I'll call the means-end view, that morality is a means to an end. What end? The end of natural good. This is why we have agreed to play by the rules, because it's best for the bottom line. So we'll look at some implications of that view in the next video. Thanks.